When I was recently writing and editing a new video on acting and characterization in Alien, I kept being reminded of John Carpenter's The Thing, one of the few other movies I could think of that has characters who are nearly as convincing as those in Alien. So after completing that video, I was compelled to rewatch The Thing, and of course, it resulted in me taking a lot of notes. Like my recent Alien video, this analysis will concentrate on the minutiae of acting, but I also took a lot of notes on the specifics of dialogue, and to my surprise, I found that cinematography and editing play a major role in making the actors' performances feel more authentic in this movie. So we'll explore all that here, plus some other randomish little observations that I might not have made before. However, I have previously made a dedicated video about the R.J. MacReady lead character, and another video about the rest of the human characters, their characterizations. So I'll try to avoid overlap with those videos. This video isn't necessarily about the characters, it's primarily about acting techniques and dialogue. So let's get started. The first character we see is Childs, just doing regular mechanic work, no close-up, just a distant shot. Then 6 more characters, the bulk of the team, are shown to us in a single recreation room shot lasting about 6 seconds. I've already commented before on how this shot says a lot about the individual characters, the competitive game metaphors regarding how the Thing will manipulate everyone, and the general sense of isolation for each character. Each man seems to be an island of his own in this shot. But I'm going to pause here for a moment because this single shot setup is a primary example of a major cinematography and editing pattern in the film. A lot of movies, and especially TV shows, use a bog standard filming and editing technique in which each character is filmed in their own separate single camera shot. Their dialogue is recorded and then the editor repeatedly cuts back and forth between those shots to capture each actor delivering their lines of dialogue in turns. Typically, film crews will also capture what is usually called a master shot. A master shot is a wide-angled, distant view of the entire dialogue interaction of a scene. When it comes to editing, the master shot is typically used as the first shot of the scene to establish the environmental context and to show which characters are actually present. Occasionally, the master shot will be shown again when somebody moves about the room or some new character enters the room, but the bulk of the scene is close-ups. That's the standard way it's done. This editing pattern is very effective, but it's also so commonly used that it's become a kind of cheap, unimaginative way to film and edit. I don't just mean today. It lost its novelty as a filmmaker's tool before I was even born, and it became even more like clockwork when it became so heavily relied on for broadcast television. Before people had TVs in their homes and they saw movies only on the cinema screen, the large screen format and much higher definition of film stock images meant that filmmakers were less reliant on close-ups for dialogue shots. They could have wider shots and the actors' faces would still be clear. But because of the tiny size of early TV screens, close-ups had to be relied on. Once TVs and home video machines became available, big film studios knew that their movies would only initially be seen on large screens and would then spend the rest of their circulation on TV screens. And so big budget movies started to be filmed more for TV audiences than for actual big cinema screens. I don't think that was always a conscious choice, it just seemed to happen naturally. Particularly, some movies would have a very short and failed cinema run and then would succeed on video. And some movies would fail to get a cinema run at all and would only be seen on VHS video rental. Some movies were shot with the full knowledge that they would be straight-to-video releases, and so their filming style would bear resemblance to TV dramas. Another separate factor is that some egotistical actors would only sign up to be in a movie if their contract guaranteed a particular number of close-up shots. Give me 50 close-ups or I'm not going to star in your movie. And that's a terrible way to make cinematography and editing choices. The Thing was one of those movies that apparently had a failed cinema run, mainly because of idiot film critics panning the movie and persuading audiences that the movie was just a disgusting gore fest and not worth seeing. Shame on you if you were one of those critics. And so The Thing then very quickly developed its massive cult status through video rentals and cable TV showings, and all the word of mouth and repeat viewings that came from that and which have lasted very strongly ever since. However, The Thing film does not pander to the made-for-TV filming and editing style, the style of quick establishing wide shot followed by constant editing between dialogue close-ups. Instead, this film, more often than not, keeps its dialogue shots wide so that multiple characters can be seen and heard in the exact same continuous shot. We'll come across lots of examples of that as we make our way through the movie. For now, this shot is a great example. There's no dialogue here, but we can see many characters doing their own little activities, and it's presented as a collective bag of information, instead of wasting screen time by cutting back and forth to show each character's activities individually. And that's another reason why wider continuous shots is often the better choice. It presents more information in a much faster time space. Windows wearing shades indoors says something about his isolation, as does Palmer with his headphones, as does Fuchs sat alone reading, as does Blair, who will eventually be a formidable monster imitation. Here he is playing and beating the Doc, who will later be killed by the monster too. Before we move on, I also want to outline another basic point regarding the casting of this film. A lot of movies that are based around a small team of people, movies like Alien, The Warriors, Predator and The Thing of course, those movies are often casted in alignment with physical stereotypes. The nerdy looking scientist or the puny looking paranoid wimp, the dashingly handsome protagonist, the fat lazy one, the dumb beefcake and so on. Often you can tell just by looking at the cast what the personality of each character will be, and if it's a horror or action film you can usually tell which ones are most likely to die and roughly in what order. This alone can make a movie seem unoriginal and predictable. In The Thing, Kurt Russell is sort of singled out as a slightly stereotypical hero, and it's clear he is the protagonist, being that he gets his own chess-playing dialogue scene with close-ups right at the start of the movie, while everyone else is first presented in distant wide shots. But at the same time, he's not a big muscle man, which was fast becoming a popular trope in 80s cinema, and his supermodel good looks are largely hidden behind an, at the time, unfashionable beard. I think that really helps the character. Instead of constantly being encouraged to admire the chisel-jawed facial beauty of the hero, we see Mac as more of a regular guy just trying to keep warm in a freezing cold environment. He may have the hilariously super cool hat and a more cool looking impractical jacket, but he's also often seen wearing goggles and a hood, which doesn't look cool and fashionable at all. Characters should be dressed first and foremost for practicality of their circumstances, with fashionable coolness being secondary to that. As for the rest of the cast here, I like that most of them are not casted according to physical stereotypes, nor are the characters themselves stereotypical in their behaviour. There are 3 scientists, Blair, Doc and Fuchs, but they're all very different to each other in physical appearance and temperament. There are 2 chopper pilots, Mac and Palmer. Now, according to the Wikipedia page, Palmer is an assistant mechanic, but in the movie he does offer to give the Doc a helicopter ride to the Norwegian base. So yeah, he doubles up as a helicopter pilot. There are 2 black guys, one a cook and one a mechanic, but also very different in personality. Bennings and Norris are both meteorologists, but they look totally different to each other as well. And they have different temperaments, and on it goes. Something that occurred to me about the casting is that many of the actors could have swapped roles entirely and the characters would still work. And I think it's great that the casting of black actors in the film at no point feels like some political correctness tick-box exercise or a social statement. They're cast because they are great actors, not simply because of their skin colour. In fact, I think Keith David, who plays Hot-Headed Childs, could have been great in the lead role as Macready. Donald Moffat, he would have been just as good playing one of the scientists. T.K. Carter, who plays Knowles, could have been just as good in the role of, say, Palmer or Windows. Imagine if the actors who played Blair and Clark had swapped roles. That could work too. In other words, the casting feels natural because the actors come across first and foremost as regular everyday guys, with their job titles and skill specialities being incidental. And so, like in life, when they're all placed in a deadly situation, a different pecking order emerges based on attitude and intelligence, and it doesn't necessarily align with their job titles or formal qualifications. But anyway, I've stopped long enough there. Let's crack on with the movie scene by scene. Now a very brief shot of 4 team members discussing the mysterious circling helicopter. All in one wide shot, no close-ups, no dramatics, no cutting, just casual and straightforward, very matter of fact, and hence more believable. So the Norwegian guy comes along, shooting at the dog, and grazes Bennings in the leg. and then Gary shoots him dead. No unnecessary dramatic touches, no over-the-top heroics, nothing to try and force a particular emotion on us. It's just a presentation of events devoid of judgment. There'll be enough drama later on anyway. Neither during the event nor in the immediate aftermath do any of the characters get over-emotional about what happens here, nor do they state the obvious in dialogue. Sometimes it's best to just let a scene's events play out non-verbally. Even Bennings isn't particularly dramatic at having taken a bullet wound.
George, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Are you?
Yeah, what's going on then?
And McCready's final line of the scene is great.
First goddamn week of winter.
A hint that there are bad times to come and this is just the beginning. I like that this whole sequence presents the team as a bunch of guys who aren't overreactionary types. They're practical guys, which is a nice contrast to how paranoid they will get later. And nobody is presented as heroic yet. Now Doc stitching Benning's leg up. Like most of the film's dialogue, this conversation is straight to the point and it's not repetitive.
Oh, come on. 4 stitches, barely grazed you.
What were they doing flying that low? Shooting at a dog. At us.
Stir crazy. Cabin fever, who knows?
We have the downplaying of dramatics, the opposite of what most movies do. Doc is basically saying the bullet wound is no big deal. This could have been done as a, sort of Bennings in unbearable pain from this bullet wound. It could have been done that way. There could also have been a lengthy discussion between a whole bunch of characters, all theorising about what the Norwegian guy was trying to say and do. But no, this movie is incredibly economical with its dialogue. Those thoughts are condensed into about as short a space as possible and delivered so casually it comes off as almost disinterest. But there are a couple of things visually in the scene that stand out for me. A mysterious person stood with their back to us in the next room. I just wonder why the hell he's there and who he is. And the close-up shot of Doc with that line delivery. He doesn't come across in the overly concerned manner that movie doctors stereotypically do. He even seems slightly intimidating here. Now another scene that is super economical in its use of condensed dialogue. Blair hassles Windows to make radio communication to report the incident, and Windows angrily states how isolated the team are.
Great.
Come on, come on.
Nobody.
Get a hold of somebody. Get a hold of anybody. We gotta report this mess.
Look, I haven't been able to reach shit in 2 weeks. I doubt if anybody's talked to anybody on this entire continent, and you want me to reach somebody.
Blair and Windows are very hostile to each other here, strongly suggesting that there are already misunderstandings and hostilities among the team. And Windows' statement about communication on this continent, I think, slyly hints at the limited communication between the men in this very camp. Remember, we had that very paradigm laid out visually here.
U.S. number 31 calling McMurdo. Urgent. Come in. Over.
Great.
Could anybody have gotten it from you, Doc? I don't see how. As soon as I'm finished, I return it right away.
Great.